Hey everyone, this is Allison Frazier for Spellbinders, and I am here to share some inspiration with the Just Add Cake birthday card making kit. We are going to be playing with Chompster today. I know he's a favorite for a lot of you. I am going to grab a couple of the other die sets to use on my card, but I actually do end up using pretty much every die set that is included in this kit. So here is Chompster, and I just love how all of these dies are packaged. They each have their own colorful guide to help you with assembly. There are pictures of Chompster eating both the pizza and the cupcake, and of course it's such a hard choice, right? Now before we start, I just wanted to show you the very first card that I made with the kit when it first came out a few months ago. This is Chompster eating a cupcake, and everything on this card is from the kit. For today's card, I knew that I wanted to make the pizza, and I will once again only be using contents from the kit. So here is the card that we will be making, and he is really going to town on that pizza, right? Okay, I have die cut all of my pieces using the color wheel cardstock that is included in the kit. I cut the main die from Fawn, and then I'm going to include the colors on screen that I used for all the other pieces. Obviously the teeth and the eyes are white. I used more Fawn cardstock for the pizza crust. And then I used truffle for the arms and the mouth. And now the pizza is really easy to assemble. It's just like making it in real life. First you add the sauce to the crust and then you top it with the cheese. You could take some brown ink and add some shading to the crust to really give it that baked, realistic look. All right, I'm going to assemble the hat next. There are just 2 pieces for this. Now for the eyes, there are some markings on the eyepiece that you want to line up with the holes in his face. So I like to just put a thin bead of glue around his eyes, and then I can turn him over and make sure everything is lined up right. Now for the pupils of the eyes, there is a die in the set that you can cut from black cardstock, but I don't really ever use that die. And that's because you're already going to have pieces you can use when you cut the glasses. Now mine are obviously red, but if you cut your glasses from black cardstock, you will end up with 2 black circles that you can use. And they just go right in the back of the white eyes. I can still use these red pieces and just color them with a black marker, but I'm going to actually use the eyes that popped out when I cut the main die with the Fawn cardstock. And I can just take a black marker and color it black. I do this a lot. Instead of die cutting something new, I'll just take scraps of paper that I already have and I'll use a marker. So here you just add them to the back and now you have pupils. Okay, so here is where we are going to start pulling in some elements from the other die sets from the kit. This is the birthday brew set, and this is the die that gives the look of bubbles in the beer. I have cut this from Fawn cardstock, and I'm just using the die to get the tiny little circles that pop out. So why do I want these? Well, I'm going to give Chompster a little bit of texture. Maybe they're freckles, maybe they're scales, maybe he has bad acne from eating too much cheese. I just thought it was a fun way to add texture, and I'm also trying to show you how to look at your dies differently. All right, now this is the confetti pop set, and this is the die that creates the gush of champagne when you pop the cork. So I have cut that from the same saffron cardstock as the cheese because yes, I'm going to make more cheese from this. Now there's also a die that cuts these smaller pieces, this die right here. And I cut some truffle cardstock with this die. And I'm going to use these 2 pieces as eyebrows. They are just the perfect shape, especially since one is bigger than the other, just like the eyes. Now at this point, I'm not sure how they'll go on with the glasses, but I'm waiting until later to add all these little details anyway. Okay, so here's the extra cheese. And I'm just going to start snipping it apart to make the strings of cheese that I want hanging from his mouth. I mean, can we all agree that this is not his first piece of pizza? It's probably not even his 3rd piece. And he doesn't have a napkin. So there's going to be cheese everywhere, right? That's my theory anyway. So again, I'm just snipping this piece apart. And now I'm grabbing a piece of fern cardstock, which I'll end up using as the card base, just so I can start visualizing how all of this extra cheese is going to look. So there's the biggest drip right there. This guy's a mess. I'm also going to add some small pieces to his upper teeth. And now I split this little piece into two so that I could choose where to place each piece. And I'm just going to glue it directly to the teeth. And then the second piece is going to kind of hang in between two of the teeth. At this point, I can start assembling the mouth, but first I'm going to do something that is totally not necessary, but something that I like to do. Because I have cheese on top of the teeth, I'm going to go ahead and cover the rest of the teeth, or at least the outline of the teeth, with the same saffron cardstock. I have this scrap of paper heading into the garbage anyway. And I like when everything is even and level before I glue things. I think it just looks better. So here I go cutting tiny little strips. Again, is this necessary? No. I'm just very obsessive about how my die cuts look. And it's really about whether you want to take the extra time to do things like this. But I think even if I didn't have the little pieces of cheese on his teeth, putting this little extra layer of cardstock between the teeth and his face creates some nice distance between the two. Okay, so now we can attach the teeth. And to do that, I have flipped Chompster over and I'm adding a thin bead of glue around his mouth. I am placing the teeth face up and then I'll position Chompster over the teeth to get my initial placement. I can then flip him over and make sure the teeth are in place. The teeth are pretty flexible to be able to move where they need to be. Okay, the teeth are in, and now it's time to add the inside of the mouth. Now you could just glue this, but we're going to add more dimension by using foam strips. There's a debossed line around the mouthpiece to show where you add glue, and these foam strips from Spellbinders are the perfect width to fit in this area. Now here's a little tip when you're working with a strip of foam. If you need it to go around a curve, just pull the release paper off. And then you can just form it around that curve really easily. Okay, so just like with the teeth, I'm laying the mouth face up on my desk. All the release paper is off the foam tape, and I can just lower Chompster carefully over the tape and make sure that none of it is visible. All right, so here is the pizza, and you can see that I've added some of that foam to the back of this as well. I'm going to bring in his arms just to figure out some initial placement of the pizza, but also for the little arm on the left, I like to attach it to the back of the pizza itself. You can attach it to the back of Chompster, but then the arm is going to have to come up to sit on top of the pizza that's popped up on foam tape. So that's why I think it's just easier to attach to the back of the pizza. So I'm just going to add glue to the top of the arm and attach that to the back of the pizza. And it's still going to look like the arm is coming from the back of Chompster. All right, before I finish assembling Chompster, I'm going to prepare my card base. I'm using one of the stamps from the Just Add Cake stamp set, and I'm stamping it at the bottom of the card base. I picked a brown ink that would go well with the truffle cardstock that I use for Chompster. And here's that fern piece of cardstock. I have trimmed this down to fit onto this A2 card base and sit just above that sentiment that I just stamped. Here is the Chompster laying upside down. And where you see the fawn cardstock, I'm going to add more of these foam strips. That's so he can sit level on the card base, since remember the mouth is popped up on those foam strips. Now I can start adding the little details to the front, starting with the cute glasses. And here are those funny little eyebrows. They definitely had a look of intensity to Chompster. You can just hear him saying, "No, I'm not going to share my pizza with you. Are you crazy?" All right, now he is ready to glue down, and I use these pieces of cheese as little markers for me to remember where I wanted to position him. I feel like I often glue things down in the wrong place after spending a lot of time planning and positioning things, so little tricks like this help. And here you can see that I'm just making sure the cheese will fit as well as the hat. Now for the pizza, I have the foam tape that I'm just pulling the release paper off, and now I can put that in his mouth. And for the arm, I'm putting a little bit of glue at each end and just positioning that so it looks like he's holding the pizza. For these drips of cheese hanging off his mouth, you can see that I cut really thin strips of foam so that they would be supported. It really makes a big difference, especially if you're going to mail the card. All right, so part of it that attaches to the face gets glued. And I do put glue on the foam tape as well, just to try to give myself a little bit of wiggle room. For the hat, you can see that I also have some foam tape towards the top. The bottom part will be glued to his head, so you want to leave that part clear of foam tape. All right, I'm bringing these little circles back in so that I can glue them down and add that fun texture. It definitely helps to have a fine tip glue bottle when it comes time to adding these. Now, I told you I was going to use every die set in this kit, right? This is the garden party set, and I have the die that makes the center of the large flower. This die has some fabulous texture to it, so I'm going to use it to make the ball for my hat. I first cut it from saffron cardstock, and now I'm going to grab another set from the kit. This is the Light the Candle set, and I'm going to use the die that creates the berry. And I'll go ahead and cut from the center of that textured piece that I just made. So the berry it's not like an exact perfect circle, which I like. And here's the final result. And I think it's such a fun way to make a textured ball for the hat. If you have a little pom-pom, that would be fun too. All right, I'm going to pause it here. Now I'm pretty much done with the card, but something is a little off to me. I think it's the sentiment in the lower corner just kind of looks trapped by the cheese. So it's just, I don't know, something's not jiving for me. So yes, me being me, I'm changing my mind and I'm going to create a new card base. And I'm going to gently lift him off, hopefully with no injuries, and be able to plop him on a new card base. So here is a side folding A2 card base from the kit, and I have another piece of fern cardstock here that I will glue to the front. All right, I said I was going to use every die set, and now I mean it. I'm using the matching die set for the stamps, and I already have my die cut from white cardstock. I like to die cut first and then stamp, and it's easy when you have a grip mat and you're misty, and you use a piece of acetate to position things. So there's my acetate, and I'm going to stamp directly on it with some black pigment ink. I find that pigment ink works best when stamping on acetate, but I will wipe it off as soon as I'm done so that the stamp will be ready to take my actual ink. Now I can take my die cut and position it under the acetate so that it's lined up with that stamp. The acetate is clinging to the grip mat, so it's not going to move. And that means that when I re-stamp, it's going to be in this exact same position. So now I'm just going to clean the acetate, remove it, and then I'm going to use some green dye ink to stamp my sentiment. All right, the good news is that I was able to get Chompster off that other card base. I used my Spellbinders palette knife to scrape him off with no injuries. And now I feel like placing him on an angle and the sentiment in this other corner, it just gives the sentiment some breathing room. I don't feel like the cheese is cutting the card in half anymore. And I like this a lot better. And now one last finishing touch. I used that beer mug detail die to cut some poppy cardstock, so I have these tiny little red circles. And I'm going to use those as embellishments on the card base. Just a few little pops of color. And there we go. Here is the final card, and I think it's really fun. I think any pizza lover would appreciate this guy. I hope that I inspired you to look at some of your dies in a different way. It's one of the things that I love most about die cutting. Even though I am very left-brained and I appreciate the precision of assembling die cuts, it's finding new ways to use them that's the most fun for me. And speaking of fun, I have a fun bonus card for you. And this time I really thought outside of the box, meaning not everything on this card is from the birthday box. We're not going to look at the full assembly of this card, but I did want to show you what I did to the back. Remember how I was adding foam strips to the back of Chompster to bring those areas level to the mouth that's popped up on foam? Well, I take it one step further, of course, and I add the same cardstock that I used for the mouth. So then everything is all perfectly the same level, and I can use glue, which gives a little wiggle room for positioning things. And look, it's more cheese. This cheese comes from the April large die of the month called Market Tote. I should say April 2026. This is now available on the Spellbinders website to non-members. And maybe after all that pizza, some vegetables would be good. There's a pepper and broccoli. And there's also this cute milk bottle. Just have fun. There are so many fun things to feed Chompster from your Spellbinders stash. I've seen such creative ideas from so many people. All right, this monster needed a monster-sized bow, so I went digging through my stash and found this one from the Halloween wreath add-ons set from a few years ago. So here's that set. And you can see the other part of the bow, which was just not going to work on this card, so I'm just using the top piece. On this top piece, there's a debossed line to give the bow some detail. You could take a small detail brush and ink blend some slightly darker yellow ink to give it the look of a shadow, but I'm going to just go ahead and cut along these debossed lines on each side. So I love these little detail scissors from Spellbinders. All right, now I'm going to add this on top of a full bow that I cut from a darker color. These two colors are the same ones I used for the block of cheese. And I did decide to cut a second partial piece to create even more dimension and shadow. So I'll glue both pieces on top of that full bow. The die that I said I wasn't going to use actually has the little center piece, so I die cut that out of the darker yellow cardstock, which by the way is beeswax cardstock. I cut Chompster from chiffon cardstock and the arms from blush cardstock, and all of those are in the birthday kit. I will add some foam tape to the back of the bow when I add it to the top of her head. Now this yellow border die comes from the Ribbon and Trim die set. This was part of the Say Cheese Classic Pooh Baby collection. There's a scallop border that would have looked really cute too. For the pattern paper in the back, I used Rosie's Studio Jubilee paper pad. So there's the paper. This pad came out a few months ago, I think. And there's a lot of really beautiful papers in here. And finally, the sentiment that inspired the entire card. This comes from the Cozy Toes Friends stamp set. So many fun sentiments in here, and they're not just for slippers. All right, so here is the final card, and I think she's adorable. I think she's sweet. just don't get in her way if she has cheese. And speaking of cheese, it was not my original intention to have 2 cards with cheese, but it just kind of worked out that way. I do love cheese myself. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. I had a lot of fun making these cards. I hope that if you take anything away from this video, it's to have fun. Look at your dies in different ways and don't be afraid to try new things. And, don't throw those tiny little scraps away. You never know when they will become useful. And I'm sure Kim is laughing right now because she laughs at me for not throwing out my tiny scraps, but sometimes they come in handy. All right, that is it for me. Thanks so much for watching. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.